Good afternoon, distinguished guests and Fulbright members. I would like to send the warmest welcome to every one of you here at our Fulbright Crescent Campus and online. My name is Bao and I'll be your MC today. To begin the event, I would like to invite Ms. Dam Bích Thuy, founding president of Fulbright University Vietnam, to deliver her welcoming remarks.
His Excellency, Mr. John Kerry. His Excellency, Mr. John Kerry, is Special Presidential Envoy for Climate. His Excellency, Mr. Mark Napper, U.S. Ambassador to Vietnam. U.S. Consul General Marie Damour. Fulbright's Chairman, Mr. Thomas Vallely. Honored guests, faculties, staff, and students. Thank you for being here on this very important occasion. Today, we are honored to welcome the U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry, to our Crescent Campus. Mr. Kerry has been a key figure in its establishment. In 1991, the then Senator John Kerry sponsored to bring Vietnamese to study at U.S. leading universities. Among the first group of students, Deputy Prime Minister Phạm Bình Minh and former Ho Chi Minh City Party Chief Nguyễn Thiện Nhân. With its success, in 1994, the Fulbright Economic Teaching Program, FETP, was founded and to date has trained over 2,000 public and private sector decision makers. At our first campus, humble in size but vibrant in policy discussion, we welcomed Secretary of State John Kerry in 2013. Secretary Kerry returned to Vietnam in 2016 and witnessed the official launching ceremony of Fulbright University Vietnam, a transition from FETP, now the Fulbright School of Public Policy and Management. Secretary, I'm delighted to say that we have come a long way since then. We now have 500 undergrad students and 160 masters in public policy students all here at this campus, our second campus that is honored to welcome you. But the capacity of this campus is not enough for our growth. In 2017, Secretary Kerry, along with the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, presented a letter of interest to support the design and construction of Fulbright's main campus in Ho Chi Minh City. That campus broke ground in 2019, and the first phase of construction is expected to be completed in 2023 to house up to 1,500 students. Let me share with you our vision of this green campus. Located on the 15-hectare parcel of land donated by the Vietnamese government at the Saigon High-Tech Park, our campus would be the most environmentally advanced education complex ever built in Vietnam, committed to net zero carbon emission. This campus is built in adherence to the LEED standards for sustainable practice design and development of the U.S. Green Building Council, along with the Lotus certification. As a university that is committed to developing solutions to mitigate and adapt to climate change, Fulbright embodies this goal in everything we do, from teaching and research initiative to policies advising to constructing a green flagship campus. And Mr. Kerry, if there's anyone who shares our vision, it would be you. At COP26, you reconfirmed that the US would cut emissions by 50% by 2030, while urging other countries to do the same. Is working towards to reach its net zero carbon emission target by 2050. But to fight climate change, we need to invest not only in climate-friendly infrastructure, but also the way we live our life. That is what Fulbright is contributing to this COP26 ambitious goal, encouraging green projects from our community members and building green infrastructure. And it is not an overstatement to say that Fulbright is an epitome of a public-private partnership, or PPP. We receive significant support from the US government, the Vietnamese government, and the private sector in most of what we do, either operation, learning, research, and now building Vietnam's first ever green campus. Secretary Kerry, it is evident that you are always there at every milestone of our creation. And today I would like to announce another milestone which will further reinforce why Fulbright is a proof of public-private partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to formally announce that 8 philanthropists and their families have committed to donating a total of $4 for the first phase of construction of Fulbright's flagship campus, forming Fulbright Founder Circle. This commitment highlights one of the largest philanthropic gifts to a higher education institution in Vietnam. Our inaugural members of the Founder Circles are Mr. Lê Văn Kiểm and the family, Mr. Nguyễn Bảo Hoàng and Mrs. Nguyễn Thanh Phượng, Mr. Trần Trọng Kiên and family, Mr. Đỗ Viết Cường and family, Madam Lê Nữ Thùy Dương and family, Mr. Lê Hồng Minh and family, Mr. Vương Quang Khải, Mr. Lương Tuấn Nghĩa and family. Founders, Aristotle once said, men are more reluctant to give away what belongs to them. And you not only give a significant amount of what belongs to you, but also give to the right people and the right amount at the right time. Thank you for being our virtuous founders and contributing to the greater good. We promise that your gifts will grow in impact, benefiting generations of Vietnamese students. Ladies and gentlemen, a gift to education is a gift that keeps giving. It is a gift that will change lives of not only the students themselves, but also our community. While we celebrate a significant milestone today, we are still a long way from achieving our vision. We promise to continue working tirelessly, and in the coming future, with additional support, we can complete our whole green campus to welcome up to 7,000 students across Vietnam. And finally, I'd like to sincerely thank our founders for this momentous gift. I'd like to thank Secretary John Kerry for your faith in us, even when we were just a bold dream. And I'd like to thank everyone here, an integral part of our journey to reimagine higher education in Vietnam, for students, for Vietnam, and for the future. This private-public partnership is stronger because of you, and together we can reach our shared vision one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dam Bích Thủy. And right now, Fulbright has some small tokens of appreciation to our founder circles. I would like to invite to the stage Mr. Thomas Vallely, Chairman of Fulbright University Vietnam, and Ms. Dam Bích Thủy, Founding President of Fulbright University Vietnam, to present the... yes. All right. Please, you would be right here. Thank you. No, you'll be right here. Great. And first off, in our founder circle, we would like to invite Mr. Lê Văn Kiểm. Yeah. Mr. Lê Văn Kiểm, Chairman of Long Thành Golf Investment and Trading JSC. Mr. Kim. Now we would like to invite Mr. Trần Trọng Kiên and family, Chairman and CEO of Thiên Minh Group. Thank you, Mr. Trần Trọng Kiên. Now we would like to invite Mr. Lê Hồng Minh and family, co-founder, chairman, and CEO of VNG. Thank you, Mr. Lê Hồng Minh. Now, Mr. Lương Tuấn Nghĩa and family, member of the board, Eco Park Group. Thank you, Mr. Lương Tuấn Nghĩa. Now, we would like to invite Mr. Henry Nguyen, Chairman of Phoenix Holdings, and his wife, Mrs. Nguyễn Thanh Phượng, Chairwoman of Viet Capital Securities. Thank you, and Mrs. Nguyễn Thanh Phượng. And there are 3 more Founder Circle members who unfortunately cannot join the event today. Mr. Cường Đỗ and family, former president of the Samsung Global Strategy Group. Mrs. Lê Emily, vice chairwoman of Long Thành Golf Investment and Trading JSC. Mr. Vương Quang Khải and family, co-founder of VNG and president of Zalo. And since these 3 members cannot be present with us today, Fulbright will send our little appreciation token to them later. And once again, we would like to invite all presenting Founder Circle members up on the stage once again for a group photo, please. Thank you everyone. Thank you Mr. Thomas Valley and Ms. Damik Thuy. Thank you Founder Circle members. As a young and growing institution, we are grateful to have precious friends supporting us in our development throughout the years. And now everyone, please excuse us for a moment to prepare the stage for the next part of the event. distinguished guests, and Fulbright members. It is the U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, His Excellency Mr. John Kerry, here with us, as he has been a key figure in Fulbright's development. And right now, he will have a few words to share with Fulbright members, Fulbright community, especially the Fulbright students, our future change maker. Right now, I would like to invite to the stage His Excellency Mr. John Kerry for his keynote speech.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. It's great to be here with all of you. Wonderful to be here. In fact, really, I have to tell you, it's a very, very exciting moment for me to see something that began as an idea when my great friend of many, many years, Tom Vallely, came to see me in the United States Senate. He had this idea about taking the work that we were doing to try to bring Vietnam and the United States closer and try to really carve out a future that was not defined by war, but defined by learning and knowledge and lessons that we could pass on to other generations. And I was lucky then to be a chairman of a subcommittee. I was not even yet chairman of the whole committee. This was in the early 2000s. And so he mentioned to me that he thought we should try to build something from the United States and in Vietnam. And so the idea of the Fulbright University, and I was a chairman of a committee back there, subcommittee, so I had the privilege of being able to say, let's put this in here and write it in. And we wrote it in. We wrote and put the earliest funding in it. I think that it was the beginning of something that really does change relationships and changes life. Out of this university, you already see it, you can feel it. President Thuy, thank you so much for your leadership and what you've done to help develop this and follow through on it. You've been terrific. I thank each and every one of the founders. We wouldn't be here without you. And this university will be thriving long after we are gone. And I think it's a wonderful statement. I also noticed as we came up here, do you notice how most of the entrepreneurs today, they don't wear a tie anymore, ever. No ties, fancy shoes, white sneakers, and clearly underdressed. And I'm jealous because I really don't know why we always wear these ties, but we do. This effort, this university, is already being felt. This morning, I met with a group of environmental active people, and a couple of them were from the university, and very expert and versed in the challenge of the Mekong Delta and the Mekong River and the problems of what's happening with all of the dams upstream and the silt that doesn't flow out as much and the rising of the sea level. And so we talked about all of that. And I want to thank the university for being so seized of this issue and also so committed to the idea that this is going to be an absolutely green university from the start. And I think that deserves an enormous round of applause from everybody. Green from... and I congratulate the donors for making possible this extraordinary financial commitment, obviously, that was announced here today. And to expand that and grow the partnership between our nations and Fulbright University, I am proud to announce here today that USAID is going to provide up to $16.5 million to this institution over the next 3 years in order to help grow it even further. And that is to be added to the commitment of the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, which is a commitment over the next few years of $37 million. So in total, I can tell you there's more than $50 million that has already been committed by the United States. I know President Biden is very excited about what this university can and will means today and will mean in the future to our joint efforts. Let me just comment on a few things, and then I look forward. We're going to sit down and have a conversation in a few minutes, and that's really... But I want to put that conversation into a context, if I may. I became involved in efforts on the climate shortly after I first came to the United States Senate in 1980s. And it was in 1988 that then Senator Al Gore joined together in sort of the first caucus within the Senate to push people to deal with the climate crisis. And a scientist by the name of Jansen testified to us in 1988 that the climate crisis was here, happening then in 1988. And so we began to organize ourselves, work with other parliamentarians, particularly in Europe. And in 1992, we all went to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, for the first Earth Day Summit. Back then, Republicans and Democrats alike were supportive of this effort. And we had our president, President George Herbert Walker Bush, 41st president, came to Brazil, signed the agreement, and we all thought we were on our way to begin to deal adequately with this issue. Unfortunately, the agreements were voluntary, and lots of people remained committed to business as usual. So we went to Kyoto in 1997. We went on to other countries. 26 different meetings over the course of the years from 1992 until last year in Glasgow. I had the privilege of leading our negotiations in Paris when we met in 2015. And we came to an agreement in Paris, but the heart of the agreement still had to be completed and initiated. So when we met in Glasgow, we did succeed. A lot of people's expectations, even though some people in the press say, well, they didn't solve the climate crisis. Well, no, of course not. Nobody thought you were going to meet in one day and come together with 200 countries and resolve it completely. But what we did was create the framework for that resolution and got more commitments from more countries and more private sector entities than ever in history. 65% of global economic enterprise, GDP, is now committed to real plans that can reduce that can hold the Earth's warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, providing we do the things that we promised to do in Glasgow. 65%. But that also means that 35% did not, right? So we still have to bring countries on board. And that's what brings me to Vietnam right now. Because we believe there are possibilities for huge transition here that will create jobs, reduce the pollution, which is what greenhouse gases are. It kills 10 million people a year around the world, and we should not be willing to accept that. In addition, we had commitments made by private corporations, commitments made by countries that haven't yet been able to make certain decisions, but which decided to end deforestation, decided they would end it by 2028. We made commitments with respect to new efforts by companies to buy green steel, to make green cement, to fly on airplanes and ship their goods on airplanes that will have sustainable aviation fuel. And I can go on and on. Volvo will have 10% of the steel they put into cars will be green. So we're going to excite the marketplace. And what brings me to Vietnam now is that your government made a very important, the government of Vietnam made an important commitment in Glasgow about moving to net zero, certainly before 2050, and hopefully even 2040. But to do that, we have to transition away from coal. To do that, we have to change what we're doing today to provide our power in our countries, all of our countries. In the United States, President Biden has made a commitment that we will, by 2035, be completely carbon-free. No gas, no oil, no coal in the provision of our power in the country. And guess what? The utilities in our country are on board. They're excited about this. General Motors, Ford Motor Company, have agreed that by 2035, we will have only electric cars. By 2030, 50% of our cars will be electric. And we will build out over 500,000 charging stations around the nation so our citizens know they can get home and get to work and get back and lead their lives without interruption. So my friends, this is a very, very important discussion we need to have now. Because, and I want to get into it. I'm just going to wrap this up by saying to you, here's why we're doing this. This is not a pet project of Joe Biden that he picked out of the sky and said, oh, let's do this. This is not a pet project of any president or any leader of any nation. This is something the scientists have been telling us we need to do. No politics, no ideology, no great power tug of war, which reminds me, maybe we'll say something about Ukraine later on during the conversation, because as I think of great power, obviously that is much on our minds. But with respect to climate, I want to just say that science tells us in simple mathematics and physics that we have to reduce emissions by 45% between now and 2030. That is the guidepost. When I hear people say 2050, 2040, I think it's terrific. I'm glad to hear that. Enough between 2020 and 2030, forget about 2050. We will blow through 1.5 degrees. And 2050 is not achievable unless you do what you have to do now. And now there is still too much business as usual. Coal use went up 6% last year. China, a near neighbor, is planning some 250 or so gigawatts of coal-fired power that will come online if they follow through on that. But that is a plan that comes at a time that the International Energy Agency, that to hit our goals, we must take out of current use 70 gigawatts of unabated coal-fired power. Unabated means obviously you're not capturing the emissions. So my friends, that is the challenge. It's not a challenge I've made up or that any politician has made up. But I'm telling you, this is exciting in the sense that these are new possibilities for all of us. Vietnam doesn't dig its own coal. You don't have miners that might or might not feel, oh my gosh, I'll lose my job. No. It's a choice that is being made to bring the coal from China or elsewhere. No need to do that, because there are other alternatives that could be used in order to provide the energy. Vietnam has incredible hydropower. Vietnam has wind, amazing wind, amazing sun. Minh Thuan provinces are full of the ability to be able to, and now you've built power in Vietnam. There are solar farms, there are wind turbines, but guess what? The transmission to get them where they need to go is not sufficiently there. So what's the obvious thing we need to do? Build out the transmission. bring global investment to the table. There are now trillions of dollars ready to invest in this transition. And I know because I've seen it firsthand in my own state, in Massachusetts, the United States, and across our country. The fastest growing job in America 2 years ago, last year, was wind turbine technician. The third fastest growing job in America was solar panel installer. It's happening, folks. And for the future, it will help if Vietnam is moving towards that technology and keeping the lead that you have shown in these last years about how to build a vibrant economy and how to improve life for people. The doing of this, and I'll end on in the conversation, the doing of all of this, building this new clean energy future, I promise you, provides a cleaner, safer, healthier world in which to live, where we have sustainability building, not the destruction of species, but genuine sustainability. So to be here at Fulbright University, which a few years ago was just, and really the man who deserves so much credit for this is Tom Vallely, who is incredible. I hope everybody will thank him for what he has done. And I look forward, President Biden looks forward to working with Vietnam as we go forward. Fulbright University is going to strengthen the relationship between our nations, and I'm pleased to introduce you to somebody who's going to help us do that. The ambassador to Vietnam from the United States is now in country. In fact, we are privileged to have him here making his first trip to Ho Chi Minh City as ambassador. I want you all to welcome Ambassador Mark Naper. Thank you. He's been here before in the embassy, and by the way, he speaks impeccable Vietnamese. He knows what he's doing. So let's begin the conversation, and we'll have a chance to share some more thoughts about where we're heading. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, His Excellency Mr. John Kerry. Please have a seat, and we'll begin the fireside chat right now. To moderate the conversation, I would like to invite Ms. Bùi Việt Lâm, Director of Communications and External Affairs at Fulbright University Vietnam.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Secretary Kerry, for the very inspirational and insightful remarks. And I think that for those of us who have been, sometimes felt overwhelmed by this momentous challenge and be uncertain about how we can tackle this challenge, the remark, I think the speech set a very clear path forward, and also I think an implementation plus to achieve that goal. And then before I begin our conversation, I want to say that if we are willing to act right now, we can do that. I still remember years ago when you came to Vietnam to meet with the Vietnamese top leaders, and as a Secretary of State, and you urged Vietnamese government to phase out coal power plants. And at that time, we thought it's impossible, right? And now, look at it right now. The vision and the efforts, tireless efforts, became reality when Vietnam has made a very bold pledge to phase out all the coal fuel plants and also trying to reach the net zero carbon emission. So we all here look forward to our conversation today, and particularly I think for our have a lot of questions for you. We would like to know, okay, for us and also for our students, our future change makers, how can we play a part in such important cause? Because as you put it very firmly, everyone, everywhere must do right now. Okay, so students, I would like to, with no further ado, I would like to give floor to you. I know, and be bold to ask our Secretary Kerry tough questions, because he likes tough questions. And this is a great occasion, great opportunity for you to ask him about very important, I think, issues that both the humankind and also our country is facing, the climate change, Students, please raise your hands, introduce yourself and the class before you ask our questions. Thank you. Okay, okay, yeah, so first, that guy first.
Thank you very much, His Excellency John Kerry. My name is Khoa, currently the Master Public Policy student for class of 23. So as you may know that we have the Power Plan 8. It's already been in consideration and has been reviewed quite a lot. But in somewhat expectation of the international community that some aspect in the plan is not met regarding the renewable energy. So the argument from the Vietnam authority is that we still rely on coal energy as a safety net as a platform for our moving up to total clear renewable energy. However, in my opinion, I think that we don't need that safety net in our first step. So what is the alternative approach for a better plan without using the coal as a safety net? But we can jump straight off.
I'm going to stand up, if that's okay. I can see who I'm talking to a little better, and then I'll sit down again. But thank you. It's a terrific question and very, very much front and center right now to policymaking. I met in the last 2 days in Hanoi with your top leadership. I met with the President and the Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister and so forth. Conversations. I raised the issue of PDP-8 because it is critical in our judgment, and I say this very respectfully. We're not trying to interfere with Vietnam, but we're trying to urge people to adopt best practices. And the best practices now are not opening a new coal plant. That is not a best practice. It's a worse practice. Because coal is the dirtiest fuel in the world unless all of its emissions are being trapped and stored, and they're not. So we have closed in the United States over 500 coal plants in the last years. And China made a decision which it announced publicly to the world, it will not fund any new coal plants around the world. Korea made that announcement. Japan made that announcement. Europe has, we have. And I don't think there are many banks in the world now, anywhere, that are going to fund coal-fired power. But some people are still insisting on using it. Now, it depends, every country presents its own challenges. Not the same solution works for every single country. But Vietnam does have a set of blessings that a lot of other countries don't have. Some countries only have coal, and they're not yet developed enough to be able to consider nuclear. And they don't have gas. And so they're saying, well, what do I go to if I have to shift off of coal? And coal for them is easy because that might be right there in their country. And the fact is that they can switch because their base load, everybody knows base load is the basic amount of power your economy, your homes, heat your homes, move your transportation, do all the things you need to do to produce electricity. That's your base load need. But most countries are at such a low level of renewable development that without any harm to their ability to plug a gap if the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing, they have enough capacity in their power to produce with what they have today, not new, don't need it, and they could be deploying a massive amount of existing technologies in order to get us ahead of the curve. Let me remind you, what is the challenge that I said a moment ago? The challenge now is to get the 45% or better reduction in the next 8 years, right? That's the goal. That's the big goal. All of us have to join in getting that reduction because that's the only way we limit the Earth's warming to the 1.5 degrees. Every point above that is really damaging, dangerous. You go up to 2 degrees of warming and you will see the end of coral reefs. You will see possibly the end of the destruction of the actual ether containing 90% of the heat goes into the ocean. And the ocean chemistry is now changing faster than it has in millions of years. Nobody has a right to ignore this evidence, but some are choosing to. So we could build out, if you're at 5% or 10% renewable in your country, and there are countries like that, or even 15, 20%, you could go up to 6% before you have a challenge to how do I maintain the base load. And during that time that you're building out that amount of renewable, we will be pushing the curve enormously on technology development. There are countless people around the world now chasing green hydrogen. Big countries investing a lot of money in green hydrogen. I heard Bill Gates told me the other day that he believes that in a short span of a couple of years or so, 3 years, we will have the cost of a kilogram of hydrogen down to about $1. Then it becomes totally competitive in the marketplace. So you know, there's a lot of technology being developed. There's about $1 trillion now, venture capital, going towards the development of these new technologies. Battery storage, other kinds of storage. If you can store electricity for a matter of days, we're now able to store it 5 hours in commercial scale utility, batteries. And that's what they used in certain places. But you don't need for the next years to be building out coal. In fact, you could be closing down some of the coal you have today. So ultimately, there's going to be a mix in a lot of different places. Our country and other countries are now exploring small modular nuclear reactors, which would be standardized, which means you're reducing the cost because you don't have to make every single part in what we call a one-off. A one-off is you're ordering it and it's the only one of its kind, and everything is many times more expensive. We can avoid that. So when people tell you, oh no, nuclear won't work, it's way too expensive, they're not looking at it. They're looking at it in today's cost, because yes, it is, but who knows in the future if you develop the right technology. So we have to chase all of these technologies, my friends, because it's that serious a challenge to all of us. There are many places where people haven't even scratched the surface of renewable. And if they build enough renewable, they'll learn that there are many ways to balance with AI, artificial intelligence, with new computer capacity. There's a huge ability to balance across greater distances and through different kinds of energy. So I think we can win that battle very, very much. And I don't think that's ended with right now. Right. The PDP that we were talking about is definitively going to be changed. They're working on it now. I have no doubt that there's going to be a new product. And all of the ministers I met with were incredibly focused and aware of the challenge. And I think discussion going on within the government as to how to do this, not whether to do it, but how to do it. And that's just critical.
Thank you, Secretary Kerry. I will invite. I think that you can sit down. Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, Secretary John Kerry. My name is Long. I am from the city of Hai Phong in the north of the country. And I'm also a current student at Fulbright University Vietnam studying a Master for Public Policy. And I just say your presence here in the country also reassure about the continued and sustained relationship and cooperation between the two countries for the good of the two people. And I remember when President Barack Obama was in this country 6 years ago, and he said, if we refuse to let ourselves be prisoners of the past, then a better future always awaits us. And the countries in the climate sector is a promising one. And we welcome American expertise and knowledge to help deliver our better outcome. Coming to your earlier remarks, and I think the electrical vehicles really hold the answers for addressing the global climate issues. And just like Tesla in America is championing electrical vehicles, our flagship car company in Vietnam, VinFast, is also, as we're speaking, they are working around the clock to deliver up to 3 models of electrical vehicles right in my hometown city of Hai Phong in the north, as you know it. And it's to make the populating of electrical vehicles in Vietnam a reality in the future requires a quid pro quo, which the investment of easily accessible and high-tech charging stations. And just the business community alone could not deliver that investment. Then I think the answer lies in an initiative for public and private partnership in delivering those charging stations, in which the Vietnamese state can invest in spreading the charging station around the country and come up with a mechanism for the private sector to operate and to recoup the investments. So may I ask you to share with us any experience, if any, from the US for devising and facilitating such a public-private partnership for building charging stations for electrical vehicles? And may I also ask of your opinion about the potential of it becoming a success in Vietnam?
Of what becoming a success?
The public-private partnership initiative for
Sure.
popularizing the charging station of the country. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. There are a couple of challenges in that question. One, just to mention to all of you, electric cars are spectacular, and I drive one, and I love it, and I sort of scratch my head and say, why didn't I do this sooner? It's and it gets what, about 400 miles, not kilometers, but 400 miles or so to the charge. Oh, okay. The key is for all of us to make sure, and I know that Elon Musk and Tesla want to do this and others want to do this, which is why they support what we're talking about, and that is move to be able to have 100% green automobile. Because today's cars are obviously not 100%, because the power that powers the factory that makes the materials and so forth is still dirty. Green in that regard. The car itself, in terms of gasoline, as an internal combustion engine elimination, is terrific. But we need the power sources and and the whole supply chain. And we're working. People are working at that, believe me. I went up to visit First Solar today, and First Solar is working hard. They've been so pumping out the panels so fast that they haven't even had time to put them on their own roof. And I asked the question about being wholly and totally green. So they want to do that, but demand has been high, and I'm sure they will do it. They're committed to being fully green. So that's the secret: is you got to be fully green. On the charging stations themselves, Tesla put out charging stations. You have superchargers all around America. You can push your icon on your screen wherever you are, and boom, the next 10 or 15 closest charging stations come up, and you can see on the icon how many slots are open at that charging station, so you know when you get there, you'll be able to charge your car, and you just push another icon, and boom, you got your address in, and you drive there. It's so simple. But they funded the deployment, but they also had some help from the government in terms of tax credit on the purchase of the vehicles and other things. So that's public-private partnership to a degree. And it makes economic sense, shopping centers and places where they position the charging stations, because you're going to stop for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it's going to be. Charging is about 20 minutes now to bring you up to enough that you get a lot of distance, which is pretty amazing. I find it really nice to actually stop a trip and get out for a few minutes and walk around a bit, get some air, get a cup of coffee, whatever it is, then you drive on. But that means business for that community. And the community has an interest in making sure they're a place where people come to charge. Because if they have stores there, then a lot of people decide to go in while they're waiting and they buy things and, you know, everybody happy. This, we believe it is so urgent to move people's position that our part of this public partnership by President Biden is we're going to build those stations and they're going to be available to people. And they'll pay for the electricity according to charge. But I mean, you know, we do pay after you've used up a certain amount of free miles that Tesla gives you, you wind up paying. But, you know, you go into a gas station today and fill up a tank on a combustion engine car, you're spending $50 or more. You go in and recharge your car, you're spending about $8 or $9 or $10 or something. So that's where I think the marketplace is going to demand very rapidly that people provide these cars and provide the stations at the same time. And the public-private partnership can work in any number of ways, but I'm confident there'll be plenty of charging stations built out pretty rapidly. And by the way, you should look at the figures. It's happening with electric vehicles and vehicles. The market is crazy right now. And they're selling, you know, as fast as they can be made. There's a delay of months, partly because there's a delay in the supply chain for the chips and other things, but there's a real challenge. So the market is there. Tesla is the most highly valued company in the world. It makes one thing. No multiple product, one thing, an electric vehicle. So that tells you a story about the marketplace and where people are betting on the future. And I'm confident Vietnam can move there very, very quickly, because when your government decides we're going to do X, Y, or Z, it may take a little bit sometimes to get there, but things happen. You know, Vietnam has a great reputation for once a decision is made, you get going, you get it done.
Thank you. May I invite a question from our undergraduate student? Yeah. Could you give a floor to the student in the back? Okay.
Okay. Hi, Mr. John Kerry. My name is Jack. I'm from the undergrad program here at Fulbright, and I'm a junior student majoring in economics. You know, when I listen to you sharing about all the plans from the government and from the business sectors, it both bring hopes, but also a lot of like uncertainty to an undergrad student like me and many of other undergrad students here at Fulbright. So
what's the uncertainty?
The uncertainty is that, well, I can major in science and solve the climate change problem. I can major in finance or economics, but I can also major in like the history of things, to history of science, for example, to tackle it. But the question is, how do we navigate through these oceans of information of the, you know, the climate crisis? How do we prepare ourselves for this future as an undergrad, as a young people in Vietnam? Yeah, thank you.
Well, spend your time reading the books and not the internet. That's how you prepare. Being honest with you. First of all, I appreciate your inquisitiveness, and that's perfect in any student, is to be looking at the broad field of things you might study to decide what you're really going to land on. I think what's important, frankly, is that you get a broad education and you have a lot of interests, and that you understand you want to be passionate about what you're doing, and you'll feel it when you feel it. I mean, you'll probably try a couple of things. In today's world, one career alone. In today's world, you can go out there and have any number of things you wind up doing. Everything moves faster, and your skill set are such that you have an ability to go do any number of different things. And there's going to be enormous demand for skills in this evolution, this transition to this new energy economy. Everybody's going to be in demand, up and down the work chain. I mean, you know, engineers, professors, architects, designers, the sort of upper end in a way, but everybody. plumbers and electricians and pipe fitters and steel workers and operators. We have to build out grids in our countries. We have to rebuild buildings, retrofit those buildings. You have no idea how much energy efficiency there are in the buildings. Huge. It's the lowest hanging fruit and easiest grab back of emissions. So if we start focusing, we have a company in the United States, came from Massachusetts, a brilliant, an immigrant from Greece who came in and started this company. He will go into a company and say, I will do an analysis of your energy use, and I want you to sign a contract with me. You don't have to pay a thing, don't pay me, until I produce savings, and I get a percentage of the savings. And he winds up financing the transition of the building, and then has a contract whereby he earns the profit from the savings. Everybody saves. The building, the people who own it, people who run it, they save money, they come up with efficiency, and this man is a very, very business person with a huge company of great capacity. So pick the things that excite you. And the other thing I'll say to all of you, the younger students here, everybody thinks they have to be in a hurry and you have to go out there and do it all in the first few years. Wrong. You have space to fail. And always remember that. That's the heart of entrepreneurial activity. You got to be willing to fail. Hopefully you won't, but you have to know that's a possibility. And if you do that, you can, that's how many more things get started and happen than ever. Think of people, I mean, look at, these are big examples, obviously, but Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard to go do what he wanted to try to do. And Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard to go do that. Now, I went to Yale. There are a lot of, I don't look well on these people who drop out of school all the time. Maybe they'll make something of themselves one day. But all kidding aside, you have to do what is going to make you happy in life and rewarded by what you are doing. And that can be different things at different times.
Secretary Kerry, thank you. I actually want to share with you that there's a famous motto in Fulbright students. We say that fail fast, learn fast. Fail fast and learn fast. So some of our students who just, the first year student, but they went out, they set up venture firms, they do some experiments, they do the community service, they're willing to explore the world and do something. So I think that is the spirit we call Fulbright spirit that we want to nurture at Fulbright. Now I would like to invite a question from our female student. You know that our female student made up 60% of our student body. And those are very, I think, courageous girls. So please.
Hello, my name is Khan Quỳnh, and I'm a freshman. I study at Fulbright University. Let me introduce a little bit about myself. Before I studied at Fulbright, I have run a project related to sustainable development, and my job is support to building a learning program for local students in rural village in Dong Nai province. And the big problem that I have faced was the superficial attitude in action of young people. Because I think it's because of the use of lots of social media, like TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. So, and through the observation and listening, I realized that young people nowadays, they talk more than they do. They share more than they empathize.
It's not nowadays. It's always been true.
Yeah, and they use social media to show off more than they really stand up and do what they really talk in climate change or sustainable development. And it's happened around me. So.
What is the question?
Therefore, my question is how we trained, how we have the young people really take action concretely in reality, not just for perception. Like they really have them, they are as smart as they are in the virtual world.
Well, I think young people should feel better about themselves because they've been at the heart of demanding change and renewing in people a sense of the crisis that we're in right now. Young people all around the world are demonstrating, acting, engaged. I find it, I mean, I'm pretty ready to be critical of one generation versus another. I mean, I grew up in the 1960s when we were involved in the civil rights movement, the voting rights movement, the women's movement, the peace movement, the environment movement, and you know, we acted on our beliefs and our passions. But, you know, I think that's been happening. I mean, I see all these folks in 350.org and in the Sunrise Movement and the Extinction Rebellion and these other efforts that are speaking out and demanding. But it's also important to finish school. It's also important to, you know, take the time to you know, enjoy the capacity of a great education and take in as much as you can. So you have to balance it. You balance the activism with, you know, the other things you need to do right now to be more effective in the long run. But I'd feel better about yourself. I mean, there's nothing wrong with sitting around in a cafe and, you know, sharing thoughts and not being that serious for a little while. Believe me, the older you get, the more you'll look for those moments. So I wish you, you know, just as I said earlier, do what you really think is going to make you happy at any given time. And there's nothing wrong with taking time off to go enjoy the fruits of being young at the same time as you're going to find out what you want to do for the rest of your life. And that will enable you to find out even better what it is that you really want to put your time into. You know, but I think I wouldn't, you know, from my vantage point, don't be in a rush to grow old.
Thank you for the advice. Yeah. So, okay, I will invite Anh Binh for question. Yeah, and he's also, right. Yeah, I think that's the biggest social media platform in Vietnam, made by Vietnam. Is,
so be careful. And I have great hope in Vietnamese youth, as I've been, you know, have chance to meet with a lot of Fulbright University students.
Microphone not on. There we go.
But so I think continue with Secretary John Kerry. I have great hope in Vietnamese youth because I've been exposed to a lot of Fulbright students, and I only admire them for both their intellect and their passion. So,
can I ask you how old you are now?
I'm going to turn 45 this year, so you know, neither young nor old.
Well, you look like you're about 19, but that's all right.
So first, thank you very much for all the things you have done for Vietnam, you know, Secretary. I think that I feel very honored to be a small part of, you know, the journey that you start. So thank you. And my question is this, and you kind of mentioned a little bit about Russia and Ukraine, and you know, obviously would love to hear a little bit of your wisdom, being in the, you know, look at the world for the past 50 years, but. And my question may be a little bit challenging, but I heard you love tough questions. So, number one, to solve this, we require a really long-term view. And obviously, people are going to concern a lot about what happened right in front of them, right? You know,
hold the mic up.
People concern a lot about what happened right in front of them. So, you know, after 30 years, and we start to have a framework, and we have seen some movement, but we only have 20 more years to act on this, and even less than 20 more, 15 years to act on this. So like, you have a lot of hope, and we also have a lot of hope. So practically speaking, put the hope aside. How you see that we're going to win over our nature of just focusing on the short term and focusing on ourselves to be able to achieve this so difficult task together on a global scale. And then a side question to that is, what is our plan B? What if we fail? Because we cannot just bet on this plan A to be winning, right? So, so that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned something, I thought I heard you say Ukraine or something?
He said he wants to hear about Ukraine, but he wants to hear about this as well.
Yeah, climate.
Climate, all right.
No, because it's just an example of like we focused.
About the abuse of Ukraine because of the crisis, but also wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Look, it's really, you're asking, this is an important question about Plan B, Plan A, what happens, and my enthusiasm for doing this. Folks, I don't sit around, frankly, thinking about Plan B because I'm fighting for Plan A. And to me, Plan B is Plan A because there is no real, Plan B becomes a survival kind of thing where if we don't hold the Earth, right now we're heading to the Earth's temperature rising about 2.7 degrees Celsius right now. Possibly more. We don't know for sure, but that's what the modeling shows. What Fatih Birol, who heads up the International Energy Agency, told us in Glasgow and has repeated afterwards, they took all of the pledges that were made in Glasgow. Climate policy in terms of the COP meetings, the international meetings every year, are not defined exclusively by what are called the NDCs, the Nationally Determined Contribution. That's the specific government plan of how much they are going to reduce emissions by. Our plan, our NDC, 50 to 52% cut by 2030. Europe, 55%. UK, 68%. They did coal a long time ago, so they're in a different place. Canada, about 45 to 50%. Korea, Japan, about the same. So you see the plans people make. But the possibilities of what we get done are actually much bigger than that. Why? Because so many different proposals were put in by the private sector, by NGOs, by individual initiatives. Bill Gates, for instance, joined with UAE and the US, and we announced a thing called AIM-4C. AIM-4C, and it is Agricultural Innovation Mission for Climate, whereby we're going to work with countries around the world where there are agriculture challenges to show people how you can deal with feed and reduce methane, and how you can deal with regenerative agriculture where you're doing no-till. You're not necessarily churning up the earth, which releases all the carbon dioxide. You're containing it and still getting better crops, doing a better job of growing. These are things the university can dig into and probably is already. So there are a host of things that come. Now, what the IEA says with the modeling, if everybody does everything they said they're going to do, we would be, by 2050, at 1.8%. That's with just 65% of global GDP on the track to do those things. So think what happens if all of a sudden Vietnam joins the fight and doesn't build more coal plants and begins to reduce them. We're changing that. Then it gets to be 68 or 70%. And then China and India and Russia and Brazil and Mexico and South Africa and so forth. 20 countries equal 80% of all the emissions in the world. So we're focused on those 20 countries. And I just have told you, about 8 of them need to come on board. The 12 others are part of those ones I just named that are in the 65%. But you know what that tells me? If we can get to 1.8 degrees without a bunch of countries, we can win this battle if everybody gets on board and becomes part of it. Now, can we move fast enough? I believe we can. And the biggest, you know what's going to make the biggest difference in my mind? It's not going to be the government. The government has to make regulatory decisions and decisions about PDP 8 and make the right framework within those. And the government, for instance, can a company, can someone come into Vietnam and buy solar energy directly from the solar company that produces it, rather than it having to go through EVN or elsewhere or wherever it's going to go, or not go at all? That's the kind of decision that makes the difference. But what really makes the difference is the investment money that has to be put on the table in order to buy the equipment, build the factory, pay the workers initially when there's no revenue, get the business up and running. That is where the private sector is going to be. And there are trillions of dollars, I promise you, that are ready to invest to make that happen. I went to the top 6 banks in the United States of America, and each of them pledged what they will invest over the course of the next 8 years to get us to 2030, and it's $4.16 trillion, folks. One of the asset managers alone says they'll do $1 trillion, or maybe 2. So how do you get that money deployed? It's not giveaway money, it's investment money. So you have to create bankable projects. And that's what we're talking with the government about. How do you do that? You can do that quite quickly by bringing the multilateral development banks to the table, IMF, World Bank, the Asia Development Bank, others, DFC, and they sit at the table and come together to de-risk the investments. I just met with a group of all your Vietnamese bankers for lunch, talking, what do they need? How do they get there? How are you going to move? And they all said they need to be able to de-risk some element of the first part of that investment so that they can say to their investors, the people who own the money, we're doing a safe investment. We can do that. The government, working with philanthropies, working with the multilateral development banks, has the ability to be able to make those investments happen. So I am looking at Plan A right now. And I think, I'll tell you, if we fail, folks, the unfairness of this planet will be exacerbated so many times over. If the agricultural capacity of Africa, for instance, were to collapse, and you have 100 million people looking for a place to live where it's not too hot and where they can get food, you think migration has been tough in the last few years? Think of what happens then, 100 million, 200 million, billion people. And what happens to the rescue efforts, and where are we going to be? This is not beyond the realm of possibility, believe me. Right now, we're overfishing the oceans at a rate that is absolutely frightening, horrendous. Big factory ships out there, strip mining the ocean with thousands of miles of nets, and half the catch gets thrown overboard. And so, you got to look at this stuff. So that's why I'm focused on what we have to do to really make it happen. Places that are pretty developed and have a lot of money will find a different planet, but they're also going to be able to protect themselves better than the people who don't. And that's going to underscore the great gap. So we have to do this in a way that's fair, in a way that helps everybody to make the great leap. Now, you mentioned Ukraine. Obviously, we are all really concerned and disturbed by the images that we see on television of a nation and a leader of that nation making a decision to, unprovoked, completely a decision of choice, to invade another nation on a whole bunch of trumped up narrative that just doesn't have any resemblance to the truth. And what we're seeing is something that does a disservice to all the lives that have been spent to try to, since World War II, create a structure where nations don't behave that way, where you don't cross international lines in order to take territory and redefine the borders of a country all by yourself just because you want to. It's grotesque. It's disgusting. It's a challenge to the order of the way we have tried to build a world of peace and of reconciliation and of ways in which we resolve these differences by diplomacy. War is the failure of those diplomatic efforts to work. And this diplomatic effort didn't fail because President Biden and President Macron and Prime Minister Johnson and others, Chancellor Scholz, weren't trying to find a way not to have a war. This happened because the leader of Russia had made his own decision way ahead of time that he wasn't going to do that. And that means we have to stand up, all of us, for freedom, for international law, for the rights of people not to be bullied in the most disastrous and consequential way, in the way that is happening right now. These are big stakes. This is important stuff in the biggest sense of the word. And hopefully there will not be miscalculations that take this to a very, very dark place indeed, where it gets bigger and wider for reasons it didn't have. This is a war of choice by one person over a completely, completely contrived, non-factual narrative that he wants to believe, but which has no basis in the reality of where the world has been. So I think we all hope for the people of Ukraine that, I mean, I hate to think, you know, there were already casualties earlier today were something like 140 Ukrainians, and express its outrage at this. And we obviously have to hold President Putin accountable for the choice he has made.
Thank you, Secretary Kerry. I'm sure that there are still a lot of questions from our audience, but given the time constraint, we just have one question. On behalf of Fulbright University, I would like to ask you that question. So, you know that Fulbright University Vietnam committed to create the future change makers and also to serve the Vietnam, the country, and the world beyond, to tackle the emerging challenges. How can we be a part of such a great cause that you mentioned? And what are the support, I think, from you, from the United States, to have Fulbright University, I think, to try our best to provide such, I think, deliver what we commit? Yeah.
We'll start by being a green university. That is exactly the kind of thing that people can do. That's of enormous consequence, folks, to make sure that the materials and the equipment you put in and the things you use are not going to create a worse problem in terms of the climate and the emissions. But there's everybody here. I know it sounds, and it sort of feels inadequate because you feel like, oh, I'm only one person and I can't make that big a difference. But I find it's fairly satisfying to try to find something every day that you can do that can make a difference. Plastic is a huge house. Are you just running the air conditioner all the time, or you know, is there a better way to provide for you know, the comforts that you need, et cetera? Equipment can be bought nowadays. You can go buy. Look for efficiencies in the appliances that you buy. You know, because most appliances are serving the European and U.S. market, we have in place efficiency standards. And on things you buy to use in the household, you can see what and you can say, I don't like that one. It's obviously an energy guzzler, and this one isn't. There are just so many individual things that people can do. You know, if you're doing a project at home and you're going to be adding on wood in one form or another, try to make sure it's reclaimed wood or it's sustainably bought and sold wood. Very, very important. The illegal logging that's taking place is huge negative impact on the climate. And we know where the wood is going, and we're working on trying to get people to enforce the laws about logging. So individual choice, collective, work with your community, like the university or other communities. find ways to make statements about this, then be active politically and try to reach out to people and talk to the minister if you can get a meeting with him or her, and come together as a group and try to put a paper of some kind or some sort of a document that might urge taking a position on PDP 8 or on something you think the government ought to be doing. I think those things actually help, and they can make a difference. So those are the things that really, I think, matter, is take an interest in the world around you and just read up. There are all kinds of things which you can find on the internet. Just go Google or whatever you're allowed to do and can do wherever you are and anytime, anywhere in the world, and look for the information. And there's just an incredible amount of good advice and, inputs that make a difference to how you can have an impact on doing things. And I know this university is already geared up to make sure that those kinds of things are being put in front of the students, and the students are aware of all of this.
If you may know that at Fulbright University Vietnam, we launched a research grant to help the Mekong Delta to deal with the climate change challenges. And more, I think, philanthropists to do these kind of things. We do it, we embody it in all our teaching, researching, and that's what we want to do in the future. But thank you a lot, and I think that one thing we may take home after our discussion, as you said very clearly, no plan B. We just have a plan A, because this is a matter of survival. And the world will not follow our advice, the world follow our example. And we can start right now, no matter how small our action will be, but we together and collectively could do it. Thank you so much, Secretary Kerry.
I'm delighted. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary Kerry and Ms. Boy Vietnam. Mr. Kerry, please remain on the stage for a second. Ms. Nam Bích Thủy, we, Fulbright University Vietnam, have a small gift for you, and we would like to present it to you right now.
Can I make one very personal comment to everybody? It just occurred to me. I was just thinking about this. As many of you may know, I was here in another life when there was a war. And I was on a gunboat, and I was reminded driving across the bridge and coming over here, I was down here in Nabe for a week or so on patrol through the rivers there. And one night I had a very, very hairy evening, really in just maybe, a couple of kilometers from here, very, very close. And I came back and saw that years later from right around here, there was a tall building, and I was looking down and I said, oh my God, that's right near the place that I remember. And Tom Vallely feels the same thing I feel, that, he was here during the same time, and we both learned a lot, but one of the most important things we learned is to find a way to make things happen that are good out of things that are bad. And I worked very hard with Senator John McCain when we lifted the embargo, and then we finally normalized relations, and we got things moving here. And so much has changed here, so much is different. And I know so many veterans of the war have come back here and been amazed by what they see. So, it proves that you can make improbable things happen, folks. You can really find good out of bad, and you can turn things for the better. And I think Tom Vallely, this university is really a monument to the ability of people to overcome and not fall into hatred, not fall into a really dark place, but find the best, which is educating young people for the future. And I'm excited by that. I feel really good about it. I know Tommy does. And I want to thank all of you for, the way in which everybody has come together in a positive and constructive way to build something spectacular out of a very dark time. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, His Excellency, Mr. John Kerry. And now to deliver the closing remarks, the President of Fulbright Student Council, Phan Thục Anh.
Good evening. Oh, good afternoon. Dear His Excellency, Mr. John Kerry, Madam President Thuy, and dear Founder Circle members, distinguished guests, faculty, staff, and friends. So I'm honored to be here with you at this mesmerizing date and to share a few words. First and foremost, on behalf of the student body, I would like to express our sincere gratitude for your firm belief in the vision of Fulbright and your continued support to its way to success. It is hard to be visionary. It is harder to stick with the vision that we have, and it is of greatness to actually work towards the vision and realize it. So thanks to great supporters and believers like you, we are coming closer to the vision of a world-class university in Vietnam for all. And I recall not so long ago, a person asked me, hey, can the Student Council tell what the student body aspires to be after graduation? And I paused for a while and thought, which one should I tell them? Because it would not be surprising if in 10 years' time, Fulbright becomes a leading institution in the region with a dynamic group of researchers, policymakers, business people, scientists, and artists, etc. And then I replied to them, we must say we have very different dreams indeed. And the person insisted, like he got confused, shall there not be one common one? And very an interesting question that they asked, and I laughed. As a council, we do not impose a dream on people and not praise liberal arts and diversity. And indeed, the diversity of dreams here is beyond titles. They differ in what students aspire to accomplish in their life through actions. Some simply want to help people, and some want to build a legacy. Some want to break boundaries, and some even want to pursue ultimate truth. And the only commonalities that we share are perhaps our traits: intellectual curiosity, leadership, community services, collaboration, and integrity. These traits of Fulbright students, faculty, and staff, the whole community, turn out to be one of our most valuable assets and endurable assets. They are not only valuable for the development of an institution, but also for the prosperity of the larger community as well. And these traits are much desirable in a world, like Arcadia put it, where we are facing a variety of intensifying shared fate issues, such as climate change, global diseases, instabilities of the global economy, and biosphere. So how do we heal Mother Earth while boosting economic growth and the pandemic without exhausting all the resources? And how do we deal with escalating border crisis and protect human rights? So complex shared fates issues like these questions require qualifications more than just technical competence. And time will tell exactly how cohorts of Fulbrighters will help address those and other issues of life. But since we are all here, we are confident in the students' ability to leave positive marks to this world. So thank you once again for placing your trust in the vision of Fulbright. Wish you all health and all the best.
Thank you, Thục Anh. Distinguished guests and Fulbright members, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. His Excellency, Mr. John Kerry, it has been a true honor to welcome you at our Fulbright Crescent Campus today, and we look forward to welcoming you to our flagship campus in Saigon High-Tech Park in your next visit. Once again, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Have a good one.
I'm not